Ever heard of a book so profound it's been studied for centuries, yet so simple a child could grasp its core?
Oh, you talking about the Tao Te Ching?
That's the one. Today, we're diving into excerpts from this foundational text of Taoism.
Sounds intriguing.
We've got a couple of sources to guide us, a translation from Wikisource, and a YouTube audiobook by Smile33.
A translation and an audiobook, that's a great combination.
Get ready for paradoxical ideas, unconventional wisdom on leadership, and a whole new perspective on strength and success.
You said it. The Tao Te Ching really turns those common notions upside down.
It's interesting you use the word guide, because the Tao Te Ching isn't about giving you concrete answers, is it?
You hit the nail on the head. It's more about sparking a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing the world.
I like that.
Hmm.
So both these sources jump right into the Tao, and wow, that's a tricky concept. The audiobook even calls it older than God.
It does, doesn't it? It's presented as the source of everything, the very essence of existence.
It's mind-boggling. Where do you even begin to define something that vast?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Wikisource translation actually points out this paradox.
It does.
It says, the Tao that can be stated is not the eternal Tao.
Wow, that's deep.
It really is. It's like trying to describe the taste of water. You can't, you just have to experience it.
I love that analogy. So if the Tao is this undefinable force, how does it affect us day to day?
That's where things get really interesting.
That's what I was thinking. I think that's where Wu Wei comes in, one of the most fascinating concepts in the Tao Te Ching.
Absolutely. Wu Wei, it's a real head-scratcher for many.
It is, isn't it? It's often translated as non-action or effortless action, which seems kind of contradictory.
Well, it's all about finding that sweet spot, that balance between action and non-action.
I see.
The audiobook uses the analogy of an athlete in a state of flow.
Ah, like everything just clicks.
Exactly. Actions happen naturally, without forced effort.
That analogy really hits home. It highlights the idea of letting go.
Letting go of what?
Letting go of control, of trying to force things to happen.
Ah, I get it. And you know what? Wikisource also emphasizes this idea of letting go.
It does.
There's a line that says, the myriad things arise but are disregarded.
The myriad things arise but are disregarded. Wow, that's powerful.
It is, isn't it? It's as if the Tao is urging us to trust the natural flow of things.
To not get in our own way, right?
Precisely, to not resist the natural order of the universe. Have you ever experienced this Wu Wei in your own life?
Let me think. Maybe a time when you achieved something without overthinking or struggling. You know, just being in the zone.
Absolutely. I think we've all had those moments where we're in the zone and things seem to effortlessly fall into place.
Oh, for sure.
The challenge, as the Tao Te Ching suggests, is to find that state of flow, not just in specific activities, but in our approach to life as a whole. It's about aligning ourselves with the natural rhythm of the universe.
That's a beautiful thought. It really is. It makes me think about another concept that seems to run throughout the Tao Te Ching. The power of softness over hardness. It's like it's saying that true strength comes from yielding and adapting rather than brute force.
You're right on the mark with that one. The audiobook actually links this to practices like Tai Chi and Aikido. They
Interesting.
use these gentle, flowing movements that are surprisingly powerful.
Really? How so?
Well, instead of meeting force with force, you redirect it, using your opponent's energy against them.
Wow. That's incredible.
So it's like a dance, almost. A very strategic and powerful dance.
And Wikisource captures this idea perfectly with that line, the world's softest steers the world's hardest.
The world's softest steers the world's hardest. What a thought-provoking line. It really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you wonder if a more yielding approach might be more effective in the challenges we face, rather than always meeting them head on.
I think you're onto something there. It challenges our assumptions about strength and power. Think about nature, for example.
Oh, like what?
Like a gentle stream, it can carve its way through solid rock over time.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a reminder that persistence and adaptability can be more powerful than brute force. Sometimes the gentlest approach can be the most effective.
I love that. And speaking of challenging assumptions, the Tao Te Ching doesn't hold back when it comes to leadership, does it?
You're absolutely right. It really shakes things up in that area.
It presents an idea of leadership that's all about humility, non-interference, and serving the needs of the people.
It's a radical departure from those power-hungry, top-down leadership models we often see in the world.
It is, isn't it?
The Tao Te Ching suggests that a true leader doesn't try to control or impose their will, but creates the conditions for harmony and balance to flourish naturally. It's a completely different way of thinking about leadership.
It is. And the audiobook really drives this home when it says that the master doesn't see evil as a force to resist, but simply as an opaqueness where the light can't shine through.
That's a powerful image, isn't it? It
Yeah.
really gets to the heart of what the Tao Te Ching is saying about leadership.
It does. It suggests that instead of focusing on fighting against what they perceive as wrong, a true leader focuses on cultivating the conditions for good to emerge.
Exactly. They lead by example, inspiring others to follow their path, not forcing them.
That's a leadership style I think we could all learn from. And, one thing that really strikes me about the Tao Te Ching is how it's packed with these thought-provoking contradictions and paradoxes.
It is, isn't it? It keeps you on your toes.
Lines like, fractured, one asserts unity, or truthful words are not pleasant, pleasant words are not trustworthy, just make you stop and think.
Absolutely. It's
Right.
like it's trying to shake us out of our comfortable assumptions and make us really examine our beliefs.
It does. And perhaps the most famous paradox of all is, those who know talk not, those who talk know not. What a powerful statement about the nature of wisdom.
It is, isn't it? It's a reminder that true wisdom often lies beyond words, and that sometimes the most profound insights come from stillness and silence.
The audiobook actually has a funny line about that. It says, if he was the one who knew, how could he have been such a blabbermouth?
I love that. It's a great way of putting it.
Which leads me to wonder, if wisdom can't always be expressed in words, how do we even begin to grasp it? How do we truly learn and grow?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? The Tao Te Ching seems to be saying that we can't fully grasp wisdom through intellect alone.
So it's not just about reading and studying.
Not entirely. It's about direct experience, about embodying the principles of the Tao in our daily lives.
So more like living it.
Exactly. It's less like reading a textbook and more like embarking on a lifelong adventure.
I like that analogy. So the Tao Te Ching is like a guidebook for self-discovery.
You could say that. And what's amazing is how this ancient wisdom has resonated across cultures and time periods.
You're right. It's almost like it taps into something universal within us, regardless of our background or beliefs.
I think it does. It speaks to a shared human experience.
One thing that really stood out to me from both the audiobook and the Wikisource translation is this emphasis on interconnectedness.
Interconnectedness, that's an important concept in the Tao Te Ching. How so?
Well, it's as if the Tao Te Ching sees the world not as separate entities, but as a web of relationships. Everything is connected.
That's a key concept in Taoism, for sure. The world isn't a collection of isolated things. It's a dynamic, interwoven system.
Right. Where everything is connected and influences everything else.
Precisely. And it's not just about things, either.
What do you mean?
Well, it applies to human relationships and even within ourselves, too.
That's a good point.
Our thoughts, emotions, actions are all part of this larger web.
I'm thinking of that line from Chapter 6 of the Wikisource translation. The valley spirit will not die. This is the primal mother. The gate of the primal mother is the root of the world. It evokes this image of a life force that flows through everything.
It's a beautiful image, isn't it? It really captures that sense of interconnectedness.
It does. And it highlights the interconnectedness not just within nature, but also in human relationships and even within ourselves.
Exactly. We're all connected.
So it's not just about feeling connected to nature, but recognizing our connection to each other and to ourselves.
Right. And that can be a very powerful realization.
That is powerful.
It can change how we interact with the world around us.
It can definitely change your perspective. It makes you think about how your actions might affect others.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial concept.
Which is?
Balance.
Oh, I was just thinking about that. The Tao Te Ching talks a lot about finding balance in all things, doesn't it? Almost like a dance between opposing forces, yin and yang.
You got it. And this concept of balance is woven throughout the text.
It is, isn't it?
It's the emphasis on softness over hardness, the idea of wu-wei, and the recognition of interconnectedness. It's about finding that sweet spot between extremes.
That dynamic equilibrium where things can thrive.
Exactly. It's not about striving for some unattainable perfection or eliminating one side of the equation altogether. It's about finding that dynamic balance where everything can flourish.
It's a pretty relevant idea, especially in today's world, wouldn't you say? We seem to be constantly pulled in different directions.
Absolutely. Think about how often we get caught up in extremes.
Like what?
Working too much, consuming too much, pushing ourselves too hard. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that true harmony comes from finding that middle path.
There's a passage from Chapter 5 that I think really captures this. The space between the sky and the earth. How much is it like large bellows? empty but endless, just move, and wind will be produced. Much talk soon comes to nothing. It is better to be in between extremes.
That's a great one. It highlights the importance of finding that middle ground, that space where creativity and action can arise naturally without being forced.
It's like that saying, less is more.
Exactly.
Sometimes the most effective action is actually non-action, or at least a more subtle and nuanced approach.
I agree.
Speaking of things that are hard to grasp, the Tao Te Ching also delves into the nature of reality itself, doesn't it? What is real? What is illusion? It really makes you question things.
It does, doesn't it? It challenges our usual ways of thinking about what's real.
Right?
It suggests that reality is more fluid and interconnected than we often perceive.
It's not this fixed, solid thing, but a constantly changing process.
Right, like a river, always flowing, always changing.
Chapter 4 really struck me. The Tao is empty, but when using it, it is impossible to use it up. It is profound and seems like the root of the myriad things. It's like saying there's this infinite source of potential that underlies everything.
And remember how the audiobook describes the Tao as being older than God?
I do.
It suggests that it transcends our typical categories of understanding. It's not something we can fully comprehend with our limited human minds.
It's mind-blowing, for sure.
But we can experience it. We can participate in it.
It's like we're being encouraged to let go of our rigid, fixed ideas about reality and embrace a more open and fluid perspective.
Exactly. Instead of trying to figure it all out intellectually, we're invited to surrender to the mystery and trust in the process of unfolding.
So we've talked about balance, interconnectedness, and the nature of reality. But what about happiness?
Ah, the big question.
Does the Tao Te Ching offer any guidance on how to live a more fulfilling life?
Well, one of its key insights is that lasting happiness doesn't come from chasing external pleasures or achievements.
So it's not about having more things or reaching a certain status.
Not at all. It's about finding inner peace and contentment, regardless of our circumstances.
Chapter 9 really nails it. Rather than pour into a cup that overflowed, it is better to stop it. To hammer and to sharpen, it won't take long to be broken. Brimming a hall with riches, one shall not be able to keep it. The man arrogant from enormous wealth buries disaster upon his road. It's like a warning against the pitfalls of excess and greed.
Precisely. And chapter 44 echoes this. Hence, intense admiration comes with a hefty price. Accumulation of treasures comes with the loss of modesty. Acquaint with humility and be unhumiliated. Know the limitations and be unlimited, be enduring.
These passages seem to be saying that true fulfillment comes not from acquiring more, but from cultivating inner qualities like gratitude, simplicity, and contentment.
You hit the nail on the head. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure or material comfort, but about finding a deeper sense of satisfaction that isn't dependent on external things. What do you think about that? Have you ever noticed how pursuing external validation or material possessions hasn't brought you lasting happiness?
Oh, absolutely. It's like chasing a mirage. The satisfaction is fleeting, and you're always left wanting more. And that brings us to another theme that runs throughout the Tao Te Ching: simplicity.
Simplicity, yes. It's a powerful concept.
The Tao Te Ching emphasizes the beauty and power of simplicity in all aspects of life, from our thoughts and actions to our material possessions.
I couldn't agree more.
Chapter 19 sums it up perfectly. As I know such three to be no mere words, stay true to that which is reliable. Recognize simplicity, embrace purity, lessen the self, diminish desires. It's a call to simplify.
It is. It encourages us to cut through the noise and distractions of modern life and focus on what truly matters. It's about simplifying our lives, decluttering our minds, and letting go of unnecessary desires.
And Chapter 80 paints a beautiful picture of a society living in simplicity and harmony. People enjoy their food, take pleasure in being with their families, spend weekends working in their gardens, delight in the doings of the neighborhood. They are content to die of old age without ever having gone to see it.
It sounds idyllic, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? It's a vision of a world where people find joy in simple pleasures and live in harmony with themselves, each other, and nature.
It's a stark contrast to the consumerist, always-on culture we often find ourselves in.
It is, but the Tao Te Ching reminds us that a simpler, more fulfilling way of life is always available to us.
If we choose to embrace it.
Exactly. It's a choice we make each and every day. Speaking of choices, one thing that struck me from both sources is the emphasis on personal responsibility. Even though there's this idea of the Tao as this guiding force.
Yes, even with the concept of the Tao Te Ching doesn't shy away from the importance of individual choice and responsibility. We have a role to play in shaping our own lives.
I keep coming back to Chapter 53. That which makes one principled is knowing. Walking the way of the Tao, the only fear is to become instructive. The way towards the Tao is unpaved, yet people like having a path. It's as if it's saying that we have the freedom to choose our path, but also the responsibility to walk it.
And Chapter 75 adds to this. Only those who are not ambitious for achievements in life are truly capable of appreciating life. It's a reminder that our choices shape our reality.
It's not about blaming external circumstances or other people for our unhappiness. It's about taking ownership of our lives and making conscious choices that align with the Tao.
Precisely. Even in the face of challenges and adversity, we always have the power to choose our response.
And to cultivate inner peace and resilience.
Exactly. What do you think? Have you ever noticed how taking responsibility for your choices, even the difficult ones, can lead to a greater sense of empowerment?
I completely agree. When we blame external circumstances or others, we give away our power. But when we own our choices, we reclaim that power and create a more empowering narrative for ourselves.
Well said. It's about realizing that we have agency, even when it feels like we don't.
And that seems to tie back into the idea of aligning ourselves with the Tao. It's about understanding that we have a role to play in the grand scheme of things.
I think you're right. It's about recognizing that we're not just passive observers, but active participants in the unfolding of the universe.
You know, it's remarkable how much ground we've covered just from these excerpts. Balance, interconnectedness, happiness, simplicity, and personal responsibility. It's incredible how this ancient text offers such timeless wisdom that still resonates today.
It is amazing, isn't it? And the amazing thing is, we've only just scratched the surface. The Tao Te Ching is a text you can revisit again and again, always finding new layers of meaning and insight.
It really is a gift that keeps on giving. It's like a well that never runs dry.
A well of wisdom. That's a great way to put it.
It really is remarkable how the Tao Te Ching can be both profoundly mystical and incredibly practical at the same time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
One moment it's talking about the unnamable Tao,
Yeah.
and the next it's giving advice on leadership or even warfare.
It's a fascinating mix, for sure.
And speaking of art, the audiobook actually describes the Tao Te Ching as a poem
Oh, does it?
and emphasizes its gem-like lucidity.
I like that.
I have to agree, there's a certain poetic beauty to how it expresses these profound ideas.
You're right. The language is so simple, yet profound.
Is,
It often uses metaphors and imagery from nature to convey its message.
oh, like what?
Well, think about Chapter 77, where it compares the Tao to a bow and arrow.
Oh, yeah, the heavenly Tao is like the arching bow. That on top is repressed, that below is held high. The excessive is expended, the deprived is supplemented.
Right. Such a brilliant metaphor for the Tao's balancing force.
It is.
The high is brought low, the low is lifted, the excess is reduced, and the deficiency is fulfilled.
It's a constant process of harmonizing.
It is, always striving for that balance.
And it's not just the metaphors either.
What else?
Even individual lines like, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished from the audiobook.
Oh, yeah.
Have a certain poetic rhythm and resonance that make them stick with you.
That's the power of poetic language, you know?
It is.
It bypasses the intellect and speaks to something deeper within us.
It does. You know, one thing I've noticed is that the Tao Te Ching talks quite a bit about death,
It does, yeah.
but not in a morbid or depressing way.
No, not at all.
It seems to see death as a natural part of the cycle of life,
Right. It encourages us to accept death as inevitable.
to not fear it.
Right. Not something to be feared or avoided, but embraced as a natural transition.
Chapter 50 puts it simply, emerging from birth and disappearing into death.
Just two sides of the same coin, you know?
Yeah.
The audiobook has a striking way of putting it.
What's that?
It says, the master knows that he is going to die, and he has nothing left to hold on to.
Wow.
It's about living fully in the present moment without clinging to life or fearing its end.
It makes you think.
It does.
Which brings us back to that idea of letting go, which seems so central to the Tao Te Ching.
Letting go of control, attachments, and ultimately life itself.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's profound.
It is.
Makes me think that this letting go isn't about giving up or becoming passive.
No.
Perhaps it's about surrendering to a wisdom beyond our limited human understanding.
Trusting in the natural flow of things.
Exactly.
It's like trusting the current of a river, knowing it will carry us to our destination, even when we can't see the path ahead.
It's a beautiful analogy.
It is, but it takes a lot of faith.
It does.
And speaking of different paths, it's interesting to know how the two sources we've been exploring today, the Wikisource translation and the Smile 33 audiobook, offer slightly different interpretations of the Tao Te Ching.
You're right, they do.
It seems like the audiobook focuses on the Tao Te Ching's relevance to our everyday lives, drawing connections to modern experiences.
Yeah, making it more relatable.
While the Wikisource translation seems to stick closer to the original text, preserving its poetic language and structure,
Right. Emphasizing its literary qualities.
it's fascinating how these different approaches can illuminate different facets of the Tao Te Ching's wisdom.
They each bring something unique to the table.
It really speaks to its enduring power and relevance that even after all these centuries, it continues to speak to us,
Yeah.
offering guidance, wisdom, and a path to a more balanced and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Tao Te Ching,
Right.
I want to encourage all of you listening to explore it for yourselves
Yeah, read it, contemplate it.
and see how its wisdom can transform your own lives.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is. Who knows what treasures you might uncover along the way.
Until next time, may the Tao be with you.
And may you find peace and harmony in all that you do.